Good morning. Our scripture this morning may sound a little familiar. It's Matthew 5 again, because we're going to get through these Beatitudes. So. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Ancient words for current consideration.
Well, I'm basing this sermon on the slides. So much for that first plan. That's plan A. I'm going to try to shorten some of the readings just so that it's not overwhelming. But what we're trying to do is go through the Sermon on the Mount to get back to like Spirituality 101. Because it's such a brutal time right now, politically, in so many ways. So much of what we love about our nation is imploding. And as convenient as it would be to blame it all on one person, the truth is that one person is the symptom, not the cause. So we need to go deeper than the level of the conversation has ever been in this nation. The Pilgrims landed at this shore with ideas about people of color, ideas about women. And as much as we can act like this is some big surprise that just happened out of nowhere, it's time to realize that if this nation does not have a spiritual revolution from within, we're not going to, we will survive in the long run, but the implosion will happen. We sometimes call it Christian nationalism. I think it's gone beyond that. I don't know if you heard the statement by the former president, or Fox News, the president, Donald Trump. "Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It will be fixed. It will be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians." Now let me just ask, if I called you my beautiful Christians, would you need much more evidence to diagnose me with narcissistic personality disorder? And isn't the church supposed to belong to somebody else? When did Donald Trump copyright Christianity? And what does it mean that when he gets elected, you won't have to worry about elections anymore? See, that's not conservative. This is not a struggle between conservatives and liberals. In my opinion, I spent my whole life studying what happened in Germany, reading Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and saying to myself, if this ever happened, I wouldn't go silent. So what are we going to do? I suggest we need to go deeper. We need to find a spiritual depth that will be strong enough and peaceful enough where we can navigate through this storm. It's helpful to realize that the people Jesus talked to were in the exact same situation in so many ways. Everything had imploded. At this point, religious figures, if they didn't sell out to Rome, they didn't last long. So Jesus is speaking in a coded language. Jewish people have been doing it for some time. Parables and a lot of the poetry is about having Jewish people understand what Jesus is saying and the oppressors not getting it. Jesus is going to be quoting from Psalm 37 when he says, "Blessed are the meek." That's very important. When you go back and read, as you can see on the slides, or maybe not. Yes, that's clear, isn't it? Let me read. The psalmist says, "Don't be vexed by evildoers, and don't be envious of the corrupt. They'll soon fade like the grass and wither away like unwatered plants. Trust in God and do good, and you'll dwell in the land and enjoy security." Now, that seems very naive, doesn't it? What truth is there for us? Now, this particular psalm is called an acrostic. That means the first line begins with their A, the second with their B. Instead of a C, there's a G. But it's a very rich poetic form, but it's condemning the oppression of the rich against the poor. One of the things that happened to European Christianity and American Christianity is this condemnation of unfair wealth was taken out. You cannot talk about the beloved community, the kingdom of God, and leave out economic justice. That's a huge problem. James, the letter from James, he says, "Whoever is wise and understanding, by their good conduct, let them show works of meekness," the same word, "and wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy," and that word could also be read zeal, "if you have bitter zeal and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above. It is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where jealousy or zeal and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice." Now, this was the part that was going to be projected. This is the part I want you to hear. James says the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable. Is Christian nationalism, is it peaceable? The farthest thing. Gentle. Okay, we're not doing too good on the report card. Listen to this one. Open to reason. This is one of the most beautiful Greek words there is. Paul has used it, and James is using it to say somebody who's willing to concede if somebody has a better argument. Early Christianity was looking for truth, not dogma. They weren't defending a position irrationally. And they understood that the teaching has to open up to be good for the whole world, not just for us. Peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial, and sincere. A harvest of justice is sown in peace by those who make peace. The word that's translated meek is very important to understand. The word could be translated meek or gentle, but the basic use in Greek culture is of a very fierce animal that's been tamed. So a war horse that is now pulling a plow is meek. Siegfried and Roy, they weren't this word, lions. But it's someone who keeps their power under their own control. They don't let themselves be triggered by what's happening around them. So when we read the news, if it's making us bleed internally, we step back for a moment. And when you see people just trying to push your buttons, calling you woke or calling you some kind of ugly word, you feel empathy for someone who feels so helpless and out of control that the only power they feel they can have in life is pushing other buttons and making other people upset. These are terrified people, which doesn't make them, they're violent. This is very dangerous. They've got to be stopped. But they're human beings. And to realize we do not hover above the human condition is essential to this kind of meekness. It takes deep humility to realize we are human beings, all of us. We all get lost. One of the most frustrating things to see people on the left starting to lie like Donald Trump lies, twisting things. You see the clickbait. And you understand it. People think that they're protecting and defending using the same devices. But my friends, if you use the tactics of an alligator, my bet is on the alligator. The psalmist is saying that that kind of violence seems very powerful, but it turns on itself. Did you get a sense of that at the Republican convention? The normal Republicans weren't there. Did you notice that? The Bushes of the world, they were not there. What courage that is. To step back from a party you worked for your whole life because you love America more than you love power. So we need to reach out and thank the people that are making that sacrifice. But what the psalmist is saying is that that kind of power is self-destructive. It will go the way of dinosaur teeth. In their day, they were invincible, but something changed and they couldn't cope with it. It would go the way the Spanish Armada, where you had this fleet of ships that was unbeatable, until somebody thought of a smaller, faster, more steerable vessel and tore them apart. Right now, the MAGA movement is based on Donald Trump, one person. You don't need to know who that person is to know that's wrong. It doesn't matter who the one person is. You can't have a democratic republic that's based on one person. And people who are fighting for that are not the patriots they claim to be. When you see Confederate flags in the Capitol, those are not patriots. They're lost, hurt human beings. They're our human family, but they're people that need to be protected from them. So what meekness means in this first little bit of the psalm is to not be reactive to what's happening. Do not let yourself get wounded or triggered by somebody else's confusion. I know that's hard, but what it's saying is, ultimately, when this thing implodes, the people who are centered, who are in control of their own hearts, will be the ones that will step in and inherit the earth. heal, to make up, to put the pieces together. So the second thing that the psalmist says is the just shall inherit the earth, which is a little bit different. The first one sounds almost passive. And just be patient, just be. This is a call to care for other people. When you look at this, you say, what can I do? I feel absolutely helpless and powerless. What the psalmist, and I think Jesus is trying to say is, you have more power than you realize if you live in your character, not your fate. Live in your character, not your fate. What's happening to you is like the weather. It comes and goes, it passes. Can you become the captain of your own soul? Can you act out of duty and goodness and dignity, even when you don't see it around you? We feel helpless, but we're not. I've studied wisdom from all over the world, and I love doing that. But my true teachers have been people dying of cancer, have been people in retirement communities, people who faced the things that would make any of us afraid and found dignity and power and peace and joy. If somebody can do that as they're dying, you know they got the rest of it down easy. You may not realize the effect you have on other people. Those people dying in an old folks' home, as they were called back in the day, didn't realize they were changing a young minister forever. And that decades later, he would give a sermon based on what he learned from them. You don't know when you help a child put their coat on how that's going to change the child. You don't know you respect somebody who everybody else is ignoring, how that changes the equation for the future. So the psalmist says, blessed are you. There's a gift in this for you. If your conditions are unfair, but you still act out of your duty. And you identify not with what's happening to you, not with your fate, but with your character. There was a Stoic philosopher that said, the reason you should never go to a fortune teller is that you need to do the right thing in any case. Right? The fate that happens afterwards is not your business. Now, I think it's okay if you're going for fun, but ultimately it comes down to what is the expression of your highest value? We all need to live out of that. Finally, the psalmist says, blessed are those who wait on God, for they shall inherit the earth. This is a little more problematic because I know a lot of the people here don't believe in God, at least not in the simple, human being in the sky kind of equation. But there is a gift if you will trust life. If you will realize that you are living in a much longer story than just your little life. One of the gifts of religion, when you tell the stories of the ancients, is you realize you're a part of a human story that goes back to the very beginning. And what that helps you understand is your life is important no matter what happens to you individually, because you can move one step closer to the beloved community, to having a better world, if you live in the long story. Many years ago, I was driving through the Southwest, and I was trying to drive through the night, and it maybe 3 a.m, something like that. I look off in the distance, and there's this huge bonfire, and there are trucks coming from every direction. And I realized these are Native Americans. I don't know what tribe. But after we went to sleep, They gathered with their indigenous religion and indigenous culture. We're like clouds floating over their lives. When we are gone, they will inherit the earth. The farmers, the gardeners will inherit the earth. People who live close to and love nature will inherit the earth when everything else caves in on itself. And the psalmist is inviting you and me to be those patient people, those enduring people. My favorite patriot is Thomas Paine. He wasn't just a patriot of the United States, he was a citizen of the whole world. His values were so much deeper than Thomas Jefferson or any of the guys that we celebrate today. He thought making America great meant eliminating pain and poverty and discrepancies and oppression. And he said something very interesting to me. He said, if there is to be trouble, let it come in my time so that my child might know peace. That's what it's like to live in the long story of humankind. Whatever happens to you is never a final defeat, because you can always move one step closer on behalf of humankind to the beloved community. I understand and share the occasional sadness, frustration, anger. I don't think we'd be human if we weren't very, very sad as we see institutions perish. Whatever happens in this election is not going to solve the problem. We have to go deeper. This isn't about a good team versus a bad team. It's about remembering principles that would be fair to everybody involved. E pluribus unum, remember that one? That's a principle. In God we trust is not a principle. That's the dumbest motto of all time, because everybody in the room has a different idea of what God means. E pluribus unum means all of us, no matter how different we are, can be a part of the Republic. Remember life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? See, you don't believe that if you think people have to earn it. If human beings have an inalienable right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, then they don't have to work to get it. We have to realign the economy to get back to what the founding principles of this nation are. So I understand the despair, but I think the psalmist and Jesus are inviting us to a foundation that's so much stronger than what's happening to us, that we can endure with courage, with peace, and even joy. If we remember to guard our own heart, blessed are those who are meek, they guard their heart. Second, blessed are those who are just, who live in their character, not in their fate. And then finally, blessed are those who trust in God or life or whatever you want to call it, which means to live in the long story of humankind. I want to close with a reading that I heard this week on YouTube. That's my life, YouTube. I saw YouTube of, who's got it, was the fly? Jeff Goldberg? Goldblum, that's it. I was not. And somebody said, how do you keep going? What recharges you? And he said this, but he had memorized it. So I want to close with these words, because I think this is kind of what Jesus calls us to. This is the true joy in life. Being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. Being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances. That kind of stings. Let me do that again, if anybody's kind of bleeding there. being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. And again, we all do that from time to time. But he says, I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community as long as I live. It is my privilege to do for it what I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment. And I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. So these are my contemplations on Blessed are the Meek. We'll take a moment now for you to think about how you understand these words.